I shouldn't remember the way her perfume lingered in the hallway. Not after all these years. Not after I told myself it meant nothing. But the truth is, when I close my eyes, it comes back like it never left, warm, subtle, the kind of scent that settles in your chest and refuses to let go. Her name was Elise. She was my neighbor, a woman who had carried herself with an easy grace since the first time I noticed her. I must have been barely a teenager then, gawking from my porch as she watered her plants in the late afternoons, the sun painting her hair gold. She was in her mid-40s now, but somehow time had only deepened that presence of hers. Confidence, yes, but threaded through it was something else. Something softer, something I could never quite name. And me? I was 23. Too young, she'd probably say. Too curious. Too restless. But that night, none of it seemed to matter. It started quietly. A half-hour conversation at the fence stretched into an invitation inside. She'd been rearranging books in her living room, stacks of old hardcovers spilling across the floor. I offered to help, and she let me in with a smile that held both amusement and caution. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice everything, the tick of the clock, the faint hum of a lamp, the brush of her sleeve when she passed me a book. I tried to keep my focus on the shelves, but every small movement from her pulled at me like gravity. The way her hand lingered just a second longer when I passed a book back. The way her laugh, low and unhurried, filled the silence. I caught myself staring more than once. She noticed, I could tell. Instead of looking away, she held my gaze. Not long, not obvious, but long enough to leave the air charged. "Careful with that one," she said when I reached for a heavy volume above my head. I glanced back, and she was closer than I expected. Close enough that I could see the faint line at the corner of her mouth, the way her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say more but didn't. My hand slipped, the book tilting dangerously, and her hand shot up to steady it. Her fingers brushed mine, light as a whisper. For a second, either of us moved. It should have been nothing. Just a touch. Just skin against skin. But the pause between us stretched too long, heavy with something unspoken. "You've grown taller," she murmured, almost as if speaking to herself. Her eyes flicked from the book and my hands back to my face. I swallowed hard, searching for something clever, something safe. Nothing came. My mouth was dry. She let go first, stepping back, her expression shifting, guarded again. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed. I bent down to place the book on the shelf, though I couldn't remember which row I was aiming for. My hand shook slightly. When I straightened, she was already watching me. Not the casual way a neighbor does, but with the kind of focus that makes you feel bare. Like she saw more than she should. I opened my mouth to speak, to break the spell, to say anything. But before I could, there was a sharp sound at the door. A knock. Firm. Unexpected. We both froze. And in that suspended moment, her eyes met mine again, wide, startled, as if we'd both been caught doing something we hadn't yet dared to do. The knock at the door dissolved as quickly as it came. No second attempt, no voice calling her name. Elise exhaled, slow and steady, before brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Probably a delivery," she murmured, though she didn't move to check. I nodded, though my heart was still pounding. The interruption had broken the moment, but the current between us hadn't faded. If anything, it felt sharper now, like a secret we both refused to name. She bent to gather another stack of books, and I caught myself watching her, the curve of her back, the way her blouse shifted with each movement. I looked away too late. She noticed. A flicker crossed her face, not disapproval exactly, but something heavier. Something aware. "You were always staring at things you shouldn't," she said softly, half smiling. Heat crept up my neck. "Maybe I was just curious." Her gaze lingered, then she shook her head, almost as if scolding herself. "You're not a boy anymore, are you?" It wasn't really a question. For a beat, silence filled the room again. I cleared my throat, desperate to change the subject. "Have you always lived alone here?" her hands stilled on the books. When she finally answered, her voice was quieter. Not always. That was all she said, but it was enough. The edges of her life had always been a mystery to me, the absence of a husband, the way she rarely mentioned family. As a kid, I assumed she preferred solitude. Now, seeing her hesitation, I wondered if solitude had been forced upon her. She straightened slowly, her expression softer than before. I was married. A long time ago. I waited, but she didn't elaborate. Just turned back to the shelves, running her fingers along the spines as though the titles could distract her from the truth. Something in me tightened. The regret in her voice, faint but unmistakable, made me want to step closer, to say something comforting. Instead, I shifted the books in my hands, fumbling for words. For what it's worth, this house doesn't feel empty. She looked at me then, and for a second her composure slipped. Her lips curved, but the smile was brittle, fragile. That's kind of you to say. I wanted to tell her more. That she wasn't just kind, she was magnetic. That even when I was a kid, I'd noticed the way neighbors leaned toward her, as if pulled by something they couldn't explain. But instead I said nothing. The silence grew heavy again, until she stepped closer. She reached to take the last book from my arms, her fingers brushing against mine. Longer this time. Deliberate, maybe? Neither of us pulled back right away. Her eyes searched mine, and in that closeness I caught the faint warmth of her breath against my cheek. 1,000 things seemed to hang in the air, her loneliness, my restlessness, the unspoken knowledge that if anyone saw us like this, questions would follow. But no one was watching. Her hand lingered on the back of mine before she finally drew it away, leaving my skin burning where she touched me. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The bond had already shifted, fragile, dangerous, but undeniable. The room was too quiet after her hand slipped away. I could still feel it, the warmth lingering like an echo I couldn't shake. She moved back toward the shelves, but her movements were slower now, distracted, as though her thoughts were caught in the same place mine were. Then her phone buzzed on the coffee table. A sharp vibration that cut through the silence. Elise flinched, almost guilty, and crossed the room quickly. I watched her glance at the screen, a friend's name, maybe, or family, and hesitate before flipping it face down without answering. Didn't want to talk? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Not now, she murmured. The air thickened again, the silence saying what neither of us dared to. She sank into the armchair, tucking one leg beneath her, her blouse shifting as she settled. Without thinking, I sat on the edge of the sofa across from her, too close, closer than I should have been. Her eyes lifted to mine. We didn't speak. The space between us tightened, the kind of silence that makes every breath feel loud. You shouldn't look at me like that, she whispered finally. My throat tightened. Like what? She almost smiled, but her voice broke just slightly. Like you know me. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, not sure what I meant to do, only that I couldn't look away. Maybe I do. Her breath caught. A faint sound, but I heard it. Her fingers traced the armrest, restless, as though her body betrayed the calm she was trying to project. I shifted closer. Barely. An inch, then another. Her knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved. Her gaze flicked to my lips, quick, almost imperceptible, but enough to set my pulse racing. I started to lean in, the moment pulling me like a tide. And then, Elise? The voice came from outside, muffled through the door. A woman's voice. A neighbor, calling casually. My chest tightened as Elise froze, her eyes wide. She stood too quickly, smoothing her blouse, motioning for me to stay silent. My heart hammered as I listened to the sound of footsteps outside, then fading. When the danger passed, she sank back into the chair, letting out a shaky laugh. You see? This, whatever this is, it's foolish. Her words stung, but her body betrayed her. She hadn't moved away. If anything, she seemed rooted in place, as though leaving would cost more than staying. I reached for the book she'd left on the table and placed it back into her hands. My fingers brushed hers again, deliberately this time. She didn't pull back. Her eyes met mine, darker now, conflicted, but unwilling to let go. We sat like that, closer than ever, hearts pounding, breath uneven, both of us knowing we couldn't step forward, but no longer able to step back. The line was there, right between us. Thin. Fragile. Waiting to break. It had been too long since either of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was thick, weighted, pressing against the walls. I shifted closer on the sofa, hardly breathing, afraid that if I exhaled too loudly the moment would collapse. Elisa's hands twisted in her lap, restless. She glanced at me, then away, then back again, as though something inside her was pulling in two directions. Finally, she whispered, "This isn't right." The words landed heavy, but she didn't move away. Her knee still brushed mine. Her shoulder was still near enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. I leaned forward, my voice low. "Then tell me to leave." Her eyes flicked to mine, wide, startled, and she didn't. Instead, she swallowed, her throat tight, and whispered, "You don't understand what you're asking for." I did, though. Maybe not all of it, maybe not the years of loneliness she carried, the regrets she buried, but enough. Enough to know I wasn't imagining this. Enough to know I wasn't alone. I reached up before I could stop myself, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered longer than they should have, grazing her temple, slipping lightly against her skin. She inhaled sharply, her lips parting. "Elise," I murmured, so close that my breath stirred against her cheek. She turned then, her face inches from mine. The smallest shift and her lips would have met mine, but she froze, trembling, torn between yielding and fleeing. "This can't happen," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Then why are you shaking?" I asked, my forehead almost brushing hers. Her laugh was soft, breathless, almost a sob. "Because I want it. And I shouldn't." The words cracked something open inside me. I reached for her hand, lacing my fingers through hers. She let me. Her grip was tight, desperate, betraying everything she refused to say aloud. Her other hand lifted without thought, resting against my chest. She could feel my heartbeat there, too quick, too raw. We sat suspended like that, our bodies pressed close, our breaths tangled in the same air. My lips brushed the edge of her hairline as I whispered, "Then stop me." She didn't move. Instead, she leaned. Just slightly, enough that her forehead touched mine, enough that her breath brushed across my lips. My entire body went still. "God help me," she murmured. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I tilted my head, our mouths so close that the heat of her lips bled into mine. The world shrank to nothing but her scent, her trembling, her quiet surrender and resistance colliding at once. Her hand gripped my shirt, pulling me closer, and then a sound from the hallway. The faint turn of a doorknob. We froze, caught in the instant before the inevitable. Neither of us pulled away. Neither of us dared to finish it. But both of us knew, there was no going back. The sound of the doorknob turning never became a full intrusion. It stilled, then clicked shut again. Whoever it was must have thought better of coming in. But the damage was done, the spell shattered, though the tension remained thrumming beneath the surface. Elisa's hand slipped from my shirt as though burned. She rose too quickly, smoothing her blouse, crossing the room as if distance could erase what had just nearly happened. I stayed on the sofa, pulse hammering. Her back was to me when she spoke, voice unsteady. "You don't know what this would cost me." My jaw tightened. "Cost you?" She turned then, her eyes raw. "Do you think no one notices you coming here? Do you think they don't talk?" I blinked, the words cutting sharper than I expected. "People talk about me being here?" Her silence was answer enough. She looked down, hands clenched at her sides. "A neighbor asked me last week if you were more than just helpful." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. She hadn't told me this. Not once. "Elise," I said slowly, rising to my feet. "Why didn't you?" "Because I didn't want to hear myself answer." She cut in, her voice trembling now. Because if I admitted it out loud, then it wouldn't just be a rumor. It would be real. The truth hit harder than I was ready for. She had thought about it, us, long before tonight. Maybe longer than I dared to hope. I crossed the room, not fast, but deliberate, until I stood behind her. She stiffened, not moving, but not stepping away either. I lifted a hand, hesitant, waiting, then brushed her hair from her shoulder. My fingers lingered at the nape of her neck, feeling the shiver that ran through her. Her breath hitched. "Elise," I said, my voice low, almost against her ear. "If it's already real for you, then it's real for me too." She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her profile. Her eyes glistened, conflicted, but her body betrayed her resolve, trembling, leaning back into the nearness of me. "Don't," she whispered, though her voice was weak. I stepped closer anyway, close enough that her back brushed my chest, close enough that her hair tickled my jaw. "I can't pretend this isn't happening." Her hand rose then, almost unconsciously, pressing against my arm where it hovered near her. She didn't push me away. She held on. "I've already lied to myself once," she said, barely audible. "I can't do it again." Her words struck me like a confession, like something long buried finally clawing free. I leaned closer, breath warm at her ear. "Then don't lie. Not to yourself? Not to me." She turned slowly, caught between fight and surrender, until we were face to face, too close, our lips inches apart. The decision hung there, fragile, electric, dangerous. And this time, she didn't step back. The air between us felt charged, humming with a dangerous inevitability. Elise's face was so close to mine I could see every flicker in her eyes, fear, longing, regret, hunger, all colliding at once. Her hand lifted as though to push me away, but instead, her fingers hovered uncertainly near my chest. When they finally landed, pressing lightly over my heart, her touch was trembling. "You don't know what you're doing," she whispered, her voice thin, almost pleading. I swallowed hard. "I know I can't stop thinking about you." Her breath faltered, lips parting as if she might answer, but no words came. Instead, she held my gaze, and in that silence I felt the truth between us louder than anything she could have said. I leaned in. She didn't move. My hand slid gently along her jaw, thumb grazing her cheek. Her skin was warm beneath my touch, fragile and alive. "Elise!" I whispered her name like it was something forbidden. Her eyes fluttered shut, just for a heartbeat, then opened again, glassy, conflicted, but no longer running. "I swore I wouldn't cross this line," she murmured. "Then why are you still here?" I breathed, my forehead brushing hers. That broke her. I felt it in the way her body softened, leaning toward me, surrender bleeding into her posture. The moment teetered on the edge. One breath, 1 inch, and everything would change. And then, she kissed me. Not a gentle brush, not an accident, but a sudden, raw claim that stole the air from my lungs. I kissed her back instantly, desperately, hands tightening at her waist as though I might lose her if I let go. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, her teeth catching mine, my hand shaking as I held her. But it was real. Fierce. Years of silence and restraint shattering in a single, undeniable collision. When she finally pulled back, her chest rose and fell in sharp breaths. She pressed her forehead against mine, eyes closed, voice breaking. "God help me, I wanted this." "So did I," I said, breathless, my hands still holding her as if the world might take her away. We stood there, both trembling, both guilty and alive all at once. The fear hadn't vanished, it hummed beneath the surface, but so did something else. Clarity. She lifted her eyes to mine, steady now despite the tremor in her lips. "If we do this, there's no pretending it never happened." I nodded, my voice low, certain. "I don't want to pretend anymore." The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was bare, stripped of lies. We both knew what we'd chosen. Whatever came after, judgment, whispers, regret, we had already crossed the line. And neither of us wanted to go back. After the kiss, neither of us spoke. Not right away. The silence wasn't awkward this time, it was heavy, but in the way of something newly born, delicate and alive, something that couldn't yet be named. Elise was still close, her breast shallow, her hands trembling where they rested on me. I didn't move, afraid that even a step back would break her courage. Finally, she let out a laugh, quiet, shaky, and pressed her palms to her face. "This is insane," she whispered through her fingers. I reached up, gently pulling her hands away. "Maybe. But it's ours." She looked at me then, and for the first time that night, there wasn't just conflict in her eyes. There was relief. Like she had been holding her breath for years and finally let it out. I guided her to the sofa, and we sat side by side, still close enough that our shoulders brushed. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. My hand found hers without thinking, and she didn't resist. Her fingers intertwined with mine, hesitant at first, then firm, holding on. "You're too young to be carrying this," she said at last, her voice low. I shook my head, smiling faintly. "I'm old enough to know what I want." She exhaled, her lips curving into the smallest smile. "You'll regret me one day." I turned toward her, brushing a lock of hair from her face again, softer this time. "I'll take that risk." Her eyes shimmered, and when she leaned her forehead against mine, I felt her whole body relax. No more tension pulling her away, no more pretending she wasn't drawn to me. Just closeness. Simple. Real. We stayed like that, quiet, leaning into each other, the world outside irrelevant. Her perfume was warm in the air, her body heat steady against me. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Then promise me one thing," she said. "What?" "Don't make me feel ashamed of this." I tightened my hold on her hand, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Never." Her shoulders eased, and she let out a long breath, as though something inside her had finally unclenched. She rested her head against my chest, and I wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. For the first time all night, it felt simple. No running, no interruptions, no masks. Just us. The fear wasn't gone, the whispers would come, the judgments, the doubts. But for now, none of that mattered. Because in that moment, we had chosen each other. And that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?